it's 74, but I'll take it down to what?
72.
I'll take it to 70. Maybe we'll get it down to 72 by the time we quit.
My wife was on this committee, she had input on that question. She said about 64.
So Cindy, how did I come through
No wonder you
last
wear a
meeting? Was
jacket
that
block.
okay?
Of course,
The
where's
last
the
couple of
jacket?
meetings have been good.
We don't quite do 64.
Was everything okay across the street from us last night? Do you know?
Yeah.
I heard the kids. Were the kids upset? And then, I mean, if it's a personal matter, I don't want to know. But I thought I'd heard the kids. There was something wrong with the kids, and then you guys had 2 cars out front.
Very good.
Something happened?
1 minute till.
I didn't see it.
Perfect. You're not wasting
Some
time.
traffic patrols were there.
Your side or our side?
At 9:60 Indigo.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, no, everything was fine.
Oh, good,
They were-
good,
They were
good.
just walking the property.
Oh, okay.
Because
Because
that's kind of a
I
vacant.
think he went away. No, 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 that's...
Well, they're in and they're out.
Oh, okay, because, yeah, he put the limo out front.
Right.
Yeah, so I wondered if maybe he went away. But I'd heard the kids with the governess, and there was a lot of screaming, and I thought maybe they got hit by a car or something.
No, no, everything was fine.
That was good.
Yeah, but don't move it over too far. I don't like it hanging right over my shoulder.
You need to get your set?
Yes.
Rita, do we have any sets of agenda and backup?
I have another set of agenda, but that backup that you made, I don't have an extra one of that.
Four projects. Right. So that's probably doable for them.
Morning. Good morning. I think you now. I'm late.
No, you're not. You, at least by my watch, you are right on. Hey, where did the rest of you go? All right. Agreeable, we'll call the meeting to order. And ask the clerk to do a roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Mao?
Here.
Mr. Randolph? Here. Mr. Sharp? Here. Mr. Williams?
Here.
Chairman Boardman?
Here.
Let the record show that town manager is also present.
Hopefully everyone has had the opportunity to look at the minutes of the meeting of April 9th. Are there any additions, corrections to those minutes? If not, a motion to approve them is circulated.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor? Opposed? I think
What's that noise?
The police,
No.
Sounds like No, it's your cat.
Yeah, I
You
hear.
shut the door.
I hear, yeah. It's reflecting off the wall.
Evidently.
All right, additions, withdrawals, deferrals, arrangement, agenda items. Chairman has none. Does anyone else?
no.
Yes, if we could move communication from the public to the end, because I know Mr. Williams has to leave early today for a meeting. I'd like to get the best use of his time as possible.
I'm confused.
In the next, we have,
Oh,
Number 3.
oh, well, wait a minute. I missed it.
6. He wants to take 6 to the end.
yes,
To the end?
Well, in number 8.
Yeah.
And then the number
arrangement of agenda items, I'd like to take number 6 and put it to the end, because Mr. Williams has a meeting he has to go to
to
this
number
morning.
7. Flip 6 and 7. Please, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm slow this morning. What?
Let's take this one.
Yeah,
and Put it,
put it,
Just flip 6 and 7.
oh, I see, yeah.
So we can get through our agenda items while Mr. Williams here, the purpose of our being here. And then we can save the comments
All right.
until the end.
okay, all right. Is, second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting dates, we have a meeting scheduled for April 30th.
Right,
My recommendation is that we have that meeting. I think we're gonna need it. Is that all right with everyone?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, then we move to item 7. The motion on setbacks and mechanical equipment.
we had the discussions, but we didn't have a final motion.
My recollection is that the sense of the committee was that we not change the current laws with not recommend a change to the current law. Is that correct?
That's on the small mechanical.
Right, right. I do think, even though we are not approving or disapproving any of these things, I think we should have a recorded vote, which is really a vote not to recommend the item in this case. So there's a record of what we thought about and what our conclusion was. So would someone make a motion that we have reviewed the issue of setbacks of mechanical equipment?
Make a motion that we have to review the mechanical setbacks that we recommend, that we recommend to leave it as is.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Now, we go to fences. In Place de Soleil, and technically, I guess, in the core area as well, although we haven't received any comments from the core area on fencing, so I think hopefully you all received, let me review it this way, and correct me, I say these things just to get it on the table, and I don't want you to tell me I don't remember it. I think when we last were together, we had reached a conclusion, a direction that we would think about it, but we would probably end up recommending that in Place de Soleil, the rules regarding fencing be changed to allow 6-foot fences in the visible area. Remember, it was divided 2 ways, the visible area and the non-visible area, and that's not exactly the way it said it. At any rate, that we would recommend that to the boards and the commission, that there be a change to the front fencing in Place de Soleil, that you could have a 6-foot fence if it was made out of a aluminum material and was landscaped to some minimum height at the beginning, which we, I think, talked about in terms of 2 feet. But otherwise, it'd be left the same. Now, we were going to think about that and then vote on that at this meeting. Since then, as you know, from the materials, Mr. O'Hare solicited comments and regarding fencing from his neighbors in Place de Soleil, and sent out an email to what appears to be something in the 50s, 57, somewhere between 57 and 70, depending on whether you count people or actual emails. More like 70 people, more like 57 emails, someone to more than one person. Those are approximate numbers. The city manager has summarized the responses in his memo dated April 21st. And once again, generally speaking, it looks like there have been, very hard to sort them out because the way the email works, you get all the material before.
All the back.
Bill has suggested there's something in the neighborhood of 8 to 10, and I went through, and it seems to me that's a pretty good number, closer to 8 than 10. There was at least one duplication from one of the 2 that we had received early in this process. I guess what I would ask you to comment on is your reactions to this latest material, whether or not it changes anything we were, any direction we were headed. Just what your reactions and feelings are about this issue at this point.
There seems to be some concerns about material selections, as far as aluminum versus PVC. How many people had fences up that had to take them down?
We had one resident who installed recently, that I can recall, and recently being within the last 12-month period, just to put it in scope. One person in Blossom Survey that had to remove a PVC fence and gate. Complicated in the issue was that that person did not apply for a permit. He was told by his contractor that the contractor applied for a permit, but in fact he didn't. And because the installation of PVC was prohibited and because of the height and because of screening, those items theoretically would have been picked up in the permit review. But the answer to your question, in the last 12 months, I can only remember at this time one.
Keith, what's your thought of PVC versus black vinyl chain link fence with a hedge in front of it versus regular chain link fence? And you see more of that than any of us probably, to some degree.
Actually, I don't see any of that.
Don't see any of it?
But I can tell you that there's different variations of products. There's some products that aren't very good, and there's some products that are very good. Obviously, the better the product, the more expensive it is. I'm just thinking out loud that maybe based on the material used, whether it's a decorative aluminum fence, you require a minimum height, or if it's a wooden or PVC fence, you'll increase the landscaping height possibility. But, I don't know how PVC doesn't really fit with the characteristics of most homes, I'm sure, in that neighborhood too. Typically, you see that in a newer home, maybe a little more contemporary home. People use some PVC. It can be considered a green product, so there are advantages to that. What are your thoughts? It sets precedence, so.
No, it's a good that you make the distinction. There are some that are better quality than others, right? And I think the risk is by opening it up, because we really can't distinguish between those that are particularly better than others, that you risk opening up to a material that's less than very strange. Like a metal fence is a metal fence, and a aluminum fence is a aluminum fence, but there's such a wide range still in the marketplace that I would be hesitant to recommend the PVC. It tends, from a maintenance aspect, in terms of, one, it can discolor, a poor quality one can discolor more rapidly, become brittle and chip and break down, and also just for some reason when I see them 2 or 3 years out, and for some reason it may be the quality of the installation, it may not be the product. I found that they tend to be sagging or going out of alignment more often.
Warp, obviously the lesser of the product has warps, it just, like you said, it discolors. It's usually a hollow material, whereas some of them are solid.
And then last, probably with the greatest concern is it's the sheen that's given off by the way the light reflects off of it. Sometimes PVC fences are trying to mimic a painted white picket fence, and sometimes it does have an artificial look to it. That would be the last reason why I would have, in some of them, that would be the last reason why I would have a hesitancy to recommend it at this time.
I asked this question, but I don't remember. Are fences in the front yard required to go in front of the board, architecture review?
Well, we did, you're asking me.
Yeah.
There was some discussion on that, and it's my recollection that at your discussion, you were leaning towards allowing aluminum rail fence in the front to 6 foot with screen. and that it would be a discouraged item. In thinking of that discussion from last meeting to now, there is a point to be made to you that when you make something discouraged, I cannot approve it, and it becomes a level 2 application. So a level 2 application costs approximately $1,015. So if you, I'm thinking that if you would allow aluminum rail fence, which you seem to think to be a good quality with landscaping, that it would be paradoxical or conflicting that you would cause a more preferred quality item to be reviewed at a cost of $1,015. So I don't think that at that last meeting this was brought to your attention by me. But it is an important point to make. If it's a more expensive, higher quality material, something that we in fact try to encourage, why would you make it discouraged, but just simply allow it without any fees? That application could go directly to the administrator.
I think that's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up. And I think at this next meeting, it might be wise just for us to see a fee list.
Pardon me?
Could we see a fee list at the next meeting?
Yes.
And one, I don't mean on anything other than architectural issues and so forth. I don't know any other things not part of this committee, but just within the scope of this committee,
Yeah.
the fee list, because that's such a good point. I think a lot of this has to be looked at in context of it. How about this height issue? I mean,
If done correctly, I don't personally have a problem with it, if done correctly. One of the owners here, and this is, and I don't know how you regulate it, I don't know how you set standards, but one of them had mentioned that they have no objection as long as it's in line with aesthetic standards of the community. I mentioned this because we were having enough trouble having residents keep up the perimeter walls of our neighborhood. So anything done poorly, let go. This could, any community, any residence. So that's always a problem. So now how do we attach that to the front fence or gates or railings or wood, PVC, and how do you regulate landscaping? I mean, that's the issue, but I don't know how we control that in our own verbiage unless you have someone monitoring all that. So
I would refer you to the section of the code.
okay.
And 70-187 subsection 6. That's the actual part of the code that we're discussing at this point in time. And it should be a simple administrative change, a simple thing to add to that code. You know, right now we have fences over 6 foot prohibited, and you know, in that box, yes. So that's section 6. Yeah, that would be the front. Yeah. So I'm sorry. In the Place Soleil, over 4 foot. That was north-south district. But in Place Soleil and the core, we're going to leave the core alone, as I understand it. But both of them are anything over 4 foot is prohibited. So within those boxes, if you refer to that section of the code, that's where the change would be made. And I believe, and Rita, I encourage you to comment if you disagree, say so. I think it would be an easy verbiage change.
Yes.
What, to address the maintenance question? He's raised the maintenance question.
I'm just saying, one of the residents said regardless of what we do, if it's not maintained or kept up, unless there's
Well,
someone doing inspections
we
throughout.
don't have a section of the code that talks about that, or it causes a code infraction
Right.
Have a code enforcement?
across the board. Pardon?
Is
Do you
that,
have a code enforcement?
We have code enforcement, but if, for example, a person doesn't like the shabbiness of the hedge, we don't have language in the code that would
Right.
address that.
Right.
If somebody doesn't like the disrepair of a fence, and unless it causes harm, or unless it's, we don't have a section of the code that addresses that either.
We don't drop to that level for enforcement.
No.
what about, I mean, how about
Do you
hours?
agree, first of all, Rita?
Right, if we had a full-time code enforcement officer and the language to go with it,
Yeah, we don't have a
like
language.
a lot of towns have, then we could control it better. But as far as the shabbiness, somebody's likely to say at this point, well, we like the antique look. You know? I can hear that coming.
But if we allow something in 2 foot or 3 foot, but then they allow the plants to die 4 months later, then and you're stuck with whatever it is. But again, I don't know
That's what I mentioned.
how,
That's what I
what
mentioned.
level we can go
Well,
to
now,
even
the
protect
dead,
it.
that idea of the dead outside of this whitefly has made a big
Right,
problem,
right.
because some of them bring them back and,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, we have some coming
But-
back, actually.
As a rule, our code does cover dead stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to approach it from the code enforcement angle, which is a rather lengthy process.
And or chip peeling or,
Yeah, what
Yes.
about a house that's
Or
just totally not
gate hanging
maintained?
on one
We've
hinge,
almost
yeah.
got that in a couple of places, where
It
no
has,
painting and peeling off and shrubbery growing around the whole house.
but I don't think we can get that. That's what I'm saying. I'm just
Well-
making a statement. I don't know how, that's a whole nother set of rules and code enforcement and, you know, that's
Yeah,
a whole nother can of worms.
I do believe that if it is a much bigger, broader subject, that, based on my understanding, perhaps our last meeting will be a week from today, it would be almost virtually impossible to make any adjustments to that.
Well, excuse me, go
That's
ahead.
okay. I was just gonna say, you can put that verbiage in, if you're gonna allow 6-foot high fences in the front of the house. In addition, with landscaping, you can put in, you know, must be maintained and kept to whatever quality or whatever level. And that could be part of that motion.
It could be, you then are singling out just a
Yeah,
specific area of concern. I think that you would do such things on a total review of the code on all aspects of what you might say to be aesthetics.
well, it's not aesthetics, I don't see it that way, I see more proper maintenance. I don't think, I think it would be well within our, role here to, I mean, we don't have to recommend specific things, you know. And at least as I hear this discussion, and I hear that other towns, municipalities and so forth have some general type of upkeep code provision, which we don't have. As a member of the committee and as the chairman, I would like to see us consider recommending in our report that this issue be studied further, this specific issue
Right.
of whether or not the town shouldn't have such a provision. Because I'm agreeing with what I think I'm hearing you saying is, you know, it complicates things if we start having individual code provisions that have maintenance requirements and then not maintenance requirements elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's much better to have some central articulated section. So I just, as I say, as a person on the committee, I would like, unless I'm misunderstanding the conversation, I would like to see in our report a recommendation that this be explored further.
Yes, Rita?
we do have a section It's, section, begins with section 22-31, and it's entitled Unsightly, Unsafe, or Unsanitary Conditions. And that covers a number of things, but once again, you're back to the degree. In other words, how bad is it unsightly? And what's the definition of unsightly, you know? But we do have a whole, it's
Would that, just
actually,
a case in point, would that cover a fence that was falling down?
I don't think the verbiage is in there, that's what she's saying.
Is that ends right there? Is that the end of the section? Just a
no, it goes all the way over to here.
bunch of exceptions or what?
No, it covers various things, right? Vegetational growth that gives out unpleasant or noxious odors, high or rank growth that may conceal pools of water, trash or filth, or any other deposits that may be detrimental to health. Brush, reeds, or grass shall be greater than 8 inches in height above the ground, that's, gets you to cut your lawn. Dead or dying trees, grass, shrubs, stumps, roots, or obnoxious growth, that's where you get back to the dead stuff, I guess.
Well, maybe as our homework, a homework item for the next meeting, we ought to all read 2231 and see.
Really, do all members have the section 22? Is there
That is
provided
great.
section 22?
It's
Pardon me?
it's in our overall manual that we're given.
Chapter 22.
Chapter 22.
I'm gonna get one of those big old manuals.
One of these?
I'll give you mine.
You'll get one that,
We'll give you 4 of them, long one, but.
We'll get you, maybe yet today. How far back do you go? You have 22?
I have-
Yeah, I see.
okay,
What it sounds like is that the code does address it. There are some phrases in there that are
Yes.
possibly purposely vague or whatever, obnoxious, unsightly. The definitions of those are really broad. And it's a cutting edge sword. When one drives around Gulfstream, there's generally a sense of the community's in good shape. It's not like it's falling apart. We tend to, especially once we get in a position of looking at what's going on, we tend to focus in on the negative rather than the positive. For the most part, it's working. But of course, these are written for those rare cases. And I generally, there's an advantage sometimes to the vagueness of it, rather than having a sense of, as a member of the community, someone as a member of the community feeling like they're constantly being watched and boxed in, so to speak. So that's why I think it kind of goes on that fine line there.
but at the same time, you want some articulated intent and authority to deal with Haley's comment.
There might be possibly something like an introductory comment for the purpose of something. These apply, this section is written or something, which could, so to speak, set the bar at what one wants.
It seems to me, if you had this fence falling down, or if you have a house that's just clearly been totally neglected and is rotting, you're gonna get a bunch of complaints from neighbors. And it
Yep.
seems to me you wanna have some ability to say, yes, we can, if we really think this is that unusual case. Section 2231A gives us a broad authority, and that's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a burden. If you're gonna accuse somebody of something like that, there's nothing wrong with you having to have the burden of proving it's obnoxious by legal standards. There's plenty of law on what's obnoxious and what's not.
Is one allowed in Gulfstream to have a white Bermuda roof that grows mold completely on it? Or would that be cited as a code violation?
That would be cited as a code violation eventually. We try to handle those on an individual contact, and if it don't work, yeah.
And what is the specific that is not allowed for one to let mold just grow unimpeded on their roof?
The roof shall be constructed and maintained so as not to leak, and roofs shall be kept clean and painted.
Clean and painted. Okay, there you go, you got it. Okay. So
Sounds
what
to
we're
me
doing.
like we
And if
could
they
have
don't
this
do it,
thing-
No, you have, you have, there's definitely, when one sees an abandoned home that's falling and possibly leaking and stuff, there's life safety issues that definitely get triggered by this. Where we're going into a more subtle lines with landscape, we're saying no fence, you need landscaping in front of it. And we're kind of like, we'd like to make the assumption that the landscaping will be maintained in an orderly manner, in what's called, for the purposes of a roof, clean manner. What's to define what clean is for landscaping? You know, is it French and well trimmed, or is it pastoral and just going free flowing?
You go back to the intent of the provision. The intent of the provision is to screen the fence. And if it's not in a good enough condition, trimmed or untrimmed, that it doesn't screen the fence, then
If, I'm thinking through the process here, for a permit application, we said it would be a level 1. So if there were language, if there's language in the code that on such a permit application, it requires landscaping, then obviously the permit would, in its final execution, would look to see that there's landscaping. So if that landscaping were to expire, die, go away, whatever, it in essence would be, I think, a violation of the original permit, which could trigger code enforcement. You agree with that?
yes,
I still think let's read that and see if we
Yeah.
think that's sufficient or whatever. I don't think we need to write the section. I think we may want to recommend that it be looked at by the other boards and stuff at some point.
And what was that? That was, which was?
it's,
2231.
section, yeah.
Let's come back to the issue of the fences. Again, with the member hat on, and reading all this material and sorting it out and reading it, you know, I'm trying to think whether it should affect where we were headed last meeting. I think it's very difficult because Mr. O'Hare's memo email didn't outline what the current requirements are. And I'm absolutely convinced after reading these submissions, reading the ones that were done earlier, driving through the area and so forth, I'm absolutely convinced that there are a large number of people that don't understand that they can have a 6-foot fence in the backyard. And it's just always about 6-foot fences. There's nothing here in any of these materials or in his description asking the question, pointing out that we're only talking about the areas that can be seen from the street. I drive through the whole area and I find very few 6-foot fences, keeping in mind that this goes back a ways, that go out the front yards. It's a beautifully open area in the front yards. And so my dilemma is that I don't think 8 out of 70 or 8 out of 100 and some is a lot of input, particularly when it's input that didn't really come in response to a definitive inquiry that outlined how the treatment is today. So these things are going through my head. I think, what do we do, you know? If the people over there really want this, you know, why wouldn't we figure out some way to recommend it? I'm not convinced that what we have here is showing that out of approximately 100 residents, that everybody wants to have the permission to have 6-foot fences out to the setback line. One of the thoughts I had, we're not, our recommendation or non-recommendation is, I mean, it's just something for the Architectural Review Board and the Commission. And that'll probably take place sometime next fall. So, it's not anything that's binding and forever gone, that's for sure. And I ruminate on things like the homeowners association. I mean, there's a group that I think, you know, every indication we have is pretty active and people are pretty involved in it. you know, I would think it would be very helpful to get their feelings and input on this kind of thing. Because this is a change, you know, putting 6-foot fences in the front yard is nothing minor. And there are 100 people over there, 100 households over there. And so all I'm doing is ruminating with you, and I'm very uncomfortable.
That's a good point. Is there any way to clarify to them, someone, exactly what the code is, as well as get them to vote for themselves once they understand what the code is and what it could be, and let them decide for themselves? Of those 100 people, you might be right, 60 might say, we don't want 6-foot fence in the front yard.
I don't think
Is
they
that a
decide for
possibility?
themselves. I think then the commission and so forth, you know, they shirk their responsibility. But at the same time, you know, of the ones I read last night, every intuitive bone in my body says if you describe carefully to them, they have the rights now and would continue to have the rights to have 6-foot fences in their backyard. I don't think the numbers, I don't think 8's a big enough number anyway, but I don't think it's gonna hold up if everybody knows that backyard's fine.
Yeah,
I think there's been some confusion about it.
yeah, I understand.
And I think the confusion because there was no requirement set out really, and other than just oral history up until 2010. In 2010, the current code provision was adopted. I think there's still a lot of confusion about what you can do and can't do. You know, as I say,
I was gonna say, I mean, if someone wants a 6-foot high fence, and it's a decorative fence, and they install landscaping as we suggested, I don't see that being a problem. But if someone wants to install a shadow boxwood fence, or a solid panel PVC fence, that's something I would discourage. Meaning that they would have to come to the architectural review board and present that in conjunction with landscaping, and let the architectural board approve that. But if they wanted to do something that was a little more, you know, decorative in terms of an aluminum fencing in the front and landscaping, that would be something that, you know, staff could approve, and they wouldn't have to go through the formalities. That's just the way I see it.
I agree.
well, that's basically where we were last meeting.
Right.
And I think, I think that's fine. I think we can recommend that. And I think we can add to it that by the time it gets to the architectural review board and so forth, it would be a good idea to solicit more input, perhaps from the homeowners association.
That's a good point.
I think we've got to throw this ball, I mean, you know, in that degree. I mean, we can say what we think is acceptable in response to 8 requests. But I think there's a vehicle over there that ought to get in the game a little bit here. And that way we get the true sense of what a broader group of people are, at least. And there's plenty of time and opportunity for that at the architectural review board when it looks at these. Because it will have hearings, and there'll be time for speeches at those hearings, and where a decision is being made, all of that is required.
It's true. I mean, the homeowners association could speak for themselves and present themselves in mass, or in
Well, they're representatives.
representatives,
They're
and this is our consensus, and you know, do it in a formal position, and not just a scattering of emails, which may be misinterpreted or misdirected, either one.
We've spent a lot of time and effort on this. I do think our conclusion, if we still believe in that conclusion, should be set forth. You know, if it's to be changed, this is,
But we're not leaving it under discouraged anymore, correct?
Not aluminum fence,
Right.
or considered what's considered decorative. We were discouraging, you know, wood shadow box fence. I don't know if we need to get specific, or panel PVC fencing. I mean, there are some decorative PVC fencing that is attractive, so.
Presently, that stuff is discouraged, what you just described, and I would not approve it. You'd have to go to the ARPP. I don't approve anything discouraged.
Chain link fence, is that discouraged?
We're talking front again.
Yeah.
Front property, solid, for example, stockade and shadow box, and unpainted.
That's discouraged.
That is discouraged. What's prohibited is over 4 foot, PVC, plastic or vinyl, chain link fence unless concealed by plant materials. That would be 100%
I
concealment.
was gonna suggest that too, if someone wanted to do chain link and they completely screen it.
Mhm.
Fence is closer than 7.5 foot from the edge of the street pavement. Fences on the right of way or in visibility triangle.
But so when they prefer, they say none, then low open wood. And actually, when you drive around the area, that's what you feel, it's, that really aren't, it's predominantly open yards.
Well, the catch is, like you all just said it, there's only a few people requesting this, not everyone's requesting it. So it's not like everyone's gonna come tomorrow and put up 6 foot high fences and there's specifics in the emails to why some people want it.
Even what I thought was interesting, on at least 2 emails from people who had not previously responded to the original request. There were 2 people that felt that 6 foot fence in the front was okay, as long as the aesthetics met equality. And they don't want to lose the aesthetic value. Most of them want to improve their property, so aesthetics is in things that I have read, is a very important factor in improving the quality of life and improving and increasing the value of properties. You gentlemen probably are more an expert on it, but I have read those things, and I think they are valid points. So they don't want to compromise on aesthetics. Those 2. That's 25% of the 8 that you referred to.
Well, think about it in terms of the motion, the recommendation. But we're not changing anything that's in there as far as being discouraged. We're just taking out of that category a 6 foot fence, aluminum and screen.
We're considering adding it to the front yard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are all the
about
prohibitions in
subsection
the front yard.
6.
They stay the same.
Right.
But an exception to those prohibitions is a fence up to 6 feet, providing it is screened initially up to at least 2. Is it metal or aluminum we call it?
Aluminum rail.
Aluminum rail.
Well, that's how we describe it,
Yeah.
and that's what a lot of contractors understand to be decorative fencing. I think that the language, and that's what I was pointing to you, Rita, if you could help me, in the section, if you refer to that section where it says prohibited, it says prohibited over 4 feet.
Yeah,
And you
you'd
could
have to change that.
You could add language. Up to, or something to that 6 foot, or unless decorative railing fences which can be up to 6 foot.
Right.
If landscaped in front would landscape material 24 to 36 inches high. I mean, that could be easily added in a code change.
And the 24 to 36 was like a minimal.
Minimum,
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
could be maintained, it could be installed at 24 inches
Yeah,
and to be maintained at no less than 36 inches.
if you want to go that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Most core properties over here that have aluminum rail, almost let them grow to screen from view the aluminum rail fence.
Is there a motion to recommend that change?
I'll make a motion to recommend that change.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and I assume that it's agreeable that in the report leading up to that recommendation, that we mention the homeowners association, mention
Yes.
a broader inquiry
Yes.
of folks over there. You know, you might, I don't know, you talk to the mayor and the commission, just on the sidelight, it might be worthwhile to write a letter to just, the people over there, and say in the course of this committee deliberation, there's some question about a clear understanding of what the current rules are, and tell everybody over there what they are as they stand today. Getting back to this issue, they want to do a 6-foot fence in the backyard.
Or
Good.
in, community discussion, I'd be willing to attend, or we could speak to the executives there of your desire and recommendation to have such a survey, basically.
I don't want to tell them their business. I
Okay.
think I'm just asking them if they care to have some input. I mean,
Okay.
and I'm not, I think that the ARPB, our recommendation or in our report, we're gonna say we think it's appropriate if the ARPB wishes to involve the homeowners association over there to find out what the people really,
Okay.
Broadway,
I understand.
like, that we're a little frustrated because we have people, 8 people. that-
So you're laying it
Yeah.
in the hands of ARPB to communicate this to the homeowners.
Okay. Now, good. Let me get the landscaping. All right. Again, Keith, would you like to talk about this? I told you last time we were gonna ask you to help us through this. Would you like to,
Fine. We're starting with Bill Dave's report.
yeah, that was sort of the beginning of it.
Well, I guess, I find what that report is.
I got a copy here, if you like.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, most of this, to me, seems to make quite a bit of sense. I did bring, some material that I'll leave Rita, because I know you love reading material.
Oh, yeah.
But they refer to a couple, books in particular, good garden books, might know that, but this is a waste management. And it lists native species, exotic species and all that, and it has, a pretty, it's got a more broad scope with regards to the plantings and native plantings, which I think is something that should be encouraged, because of maintenance, because of water. So, we can go through that. They do list quite a few of these species on their plant list. But, I know this is a topic of discussion, and the 25% rule in terms of a permit is probably the most, and it is perplexing. I mean, what is 25%? I mean, typically, when you're working on a home, and you're pulling a permit, the percentage is based on an assessed value of the home, based on the cost of construction. So, I guess what I'm getting is, pulling a permit on landscaping is a little different than pulling a permit on building. I mean, you're pulling a permit on building because you have inspectors in the town that are going to inspect the work that the architects, general contractors do. So you have people in the town going to inspect the landscaping, botanists, horticulturists, arborists, what are you providing the homeowner if you're making them pay for a permit for landscaping? That's my question. making sure that all the plants are there, all the plants are meeting height and criteria?
Well, I think that would be a part of it, that the landscape plan is audited, reviewed, and it is planted as approved.
And I guess my next question would be, it would depend on the size of the lot, the size of the property and what you're doing. I mean, there could be some passionate gardener out there who likes to, freshen up her gardens and, do her thing, but I think 25% is a weird number. And I think it's also kind of strange that, personally, I think if you're gonna inspect landscaping, it should be associated with the construction, whether you're renovating a house or it's new construction, or you're putting on an addition.
That's your opportunity.
That's your opportunity,
Right,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, Mrs. Jones is doing her garden and wants to, get her
Enhance it.
landscaping enhanced in the backyard. I don't see why she should be subjected to pulling a permit for something like that.
What about a total renovation or a total front yard reconstruction of landscaping?
Yeah, would that be, I guess the specifics are, is it just planting, is it hardscaping, or are you talking driveways and properties and walls and all that? Or is it just plant material? I think that's what needs to be
If
outlined.
it's a permittable hardscape or building, then
It
that's
would
your
fall under-
opportunity.
Exactly.
Well, we
That
do have-
landscaping would
We
also-
have had instances where people wanted to revamp their landscape on an established home. The section of the code that I have referred to has to do with the neighborhood context. Could this affect the neighbor's view of that home? Therefore, is it important enough to have a review of it from somebody other than the administrator? What I think, particularly not living here, it really isn't too relevant other than my responsibility. But for a resident in a neighborhood or a block, it could impact their home, and they may want to have input to it. So I do believe that you're not just dealing with new construction. That's pretty easy. I mean, that's a requirement. It's what happens when you don't have a reconstruction, remodeling. You have specifically a request to landscape. How do we articulate the requirements of such?
What about the person that, if someone plants a bunch of these forbidden plants, do you have the ability to go in there? I mean, when the neighbor complains that the kudzu's coming over do you have the ability to go in there currently and tell the people they have to take those plants out?
It's a difficult item to evaluate. The first criteria that I use is if it is a new planting. If I know of when it's originated, and if I know that, then I can have a code supposedly to go to that would say yea or nay. Whether or not a kudzu is grandfathered in, I would say, I don't know. That's really a legal matter, but
New plants
new
that are
plants,
on the forbidden list,
yeah,
permit or no permit, you have the ability
I
to go
believe
in
I
and
do.
say remove.
I believe I do, yes. It's prohibited. They're
Yeah.
prohibited. If the code says they're prohibited.
Right, no, I'm
If the
assuming
code
that
says they're
they're listed.
prohibited,
Yeah,
I can establish a time of planting,
all right.
and the code is in existence prior to the planting time, then yes, I believe I could. I would take that approach.
So, I mean, whether it's 25% or 50%, I and then doing landscaping, they still have to follow the guidelines with regards to, you know, non-exotic species, native species, or whatever the requirements are.
Well, let me bore down to a potential issue that has happened, and we have been in some type of court action related to it. Say, for example, a person wants to put in new plantings that are permitted, acceptable, but they want to put them in the town's right of way. How do I control that other than to say you can't plant in the right of way? That sometimes creates irritation between the town and that person, because there are people who have previously, outside the date of the code, planted in the right of way. So that person says, hey, my neighbor has it, why can't I have it? And the only recourse I have to say is that I don't know if it's factual and if it's truthful. I don't know when those were planted, but I know when you have planted yours. So, although it may be a good intent, and most people would consider adding any landscaping to a property as a good thing, there can be some negative aspects of it. So I think that it's wise to have some trigger, some mechanism, whatever that may be, 25%, 50%, but that would require a landscape plan. If you have a requirement for a landscape plan, using a survey, we can establish where the property is. You plant on your property, and according to the allowable list of products, no problem. But a code that does not specify something of that nature, creating a reviewable document for somebody, is potentially
I don't
a
think,
problem.
I don't think it's, I mean, first of all, I think if it's an issue of people planting in the right of way, that's not a design issue in the design code. That's a question of how the town feels about the use of its right of way. And if it's saying we don't want planting in the right of way, then it has to have a code section somewhere that says there'll be no planting in the right of way, and then they go out and enforce it when people do it.
Well, we don't have a section, to my knowledge, we don't have a section of the code, there shall be no planting in the right of way. But it is town property, and so the assumption is you must have approval to plant on somebody else's property.
Yeah, or some type of removal agreement.
Yeah.
So, but that's something that should be articulated up here.
Yes, but how do I get it there? That's
Well,
it.
the second thing-
I'm the one dealing with it, and I don't want to deal with it. Very clear. Very clear.
My second initial reaction is, if I've got 25%, I can do 25% without coming in and getting a permit.
Yes.
24%, right? I can fill that right away up with less than 24%.
So maybe that's not the rule that you want to adopt or suggest, but maybe there is something in your brain power that could create an acceptable trigger that could be controlled by the administrator or sent to the next level of review.
Do most towns have provisions like these?
I don't know, really, there's a few municipalities that have permitted landscaping, but the majority do not. Again, it's, you know, the whole idea of a permit is that someone's gonna come and reinforce what someone else has done.
Right.
And, you know, when it comes to landscaping, most towns don't have people that do that. So I would say if it's a major renovation to landscaping, then it would require.
Then please define for me major,
Would you put a
because
dollar
I
value
get
on it
these
rather than a
questions all the
percentage?
time.
Anything in excess of $5,000, but
Because somebody might have Go and buy the most expensive.
That's
Or
not-
give
flower.
That's nothing
By
in landscaping.
He would pick that, but
Right.
then, but if you're given the plans from someone, then there's no value, so I mean, that can be, you know.
And a very good point,
you know.
that's happened.
Well, for one, if it's gonna be a percentage, it's gotta be in
No.
case by case, I mean, it's.
No, I'm not, please, I'm just giving you input, I'm expressing difficulties that I've had in this area. I don't care what your rule is, but what we have in our landscape code now needs to be redefined. You need to give whoever is the administrator, or whoever is reviewing it, tools to articulate what's right and what's wrong. That's what we're after. I mean, just, you see in your mind the difficulty that a person has and the quagmire that it can present. And if a person wants to get you involved legally, it is a open door.
No, I understand.
Need to close that door and yet be fair to the residents. What that answer is, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how that percentage relates to people who are not, you know, abiding by the code or the rules. It seems like there's two different issues here.
Okay.
Well, what is the current situation? If a person is building an entirely new, what's going on here, at least on this side so much, they're gonna scrape an old house and put a new one on the lot. And as part of the plans that are submitted for approval, are they required to put a landscape plan?
Yes, they are.
And so you and the architectural review board and so forth pass on if it's a total deal.
Well, let me cite you something that I feel makes it difficult for me. The code is very specific on, the code is found in section 71, it begins 146, general landscaping standards, planning techniques, you know. But it tells about certain ground covers and shrubs and so on. And yet, at the end, which is basically an open book, and we've actually, through a hearing, not won our town's position because of the statement that other plants used in town, that's, you need to follow me, that code, that's on 7071, it says other plants used in town. Then it comes to A, and then it comes to B. And then it refers to two excellent reference books, R.
Well, I'm sorry, Bill, where are you?
Yeah.
Page number.
Okay, page, let's begin with page 7071.
The bottom here, 71. Not section 71, but page 71.
Page 70,
Okay.
71.
It's section 7150, section.
That, actually, that is correct, page 7071. So it gives the applicant an idea that there are other plants used in town which therefore should be allowed. But it's not a complete listing. And then it refers to excellent reference books. And from my discovery, there are more than just two excellent books. There are many excellent books
Oh,
that
that's one I
talk
bought.
about,
That's one I bought, was the waste management, which is not really a book, but
Yeah.
it's probably
all
the best
native,
material out there.
all native plants encouraged and so on. So,
At the same time, it says two excellent books are, but it doesn't say it's limited to the two excellent books.
correct, correct. So, I don't know exactly how to administer, frankly. So the best thing for me is to allow the peers of the community, which may be an ARPB or it may be a commission, to the commission also, depending on the level of review. Let the peers, the residents, have input as to if it is found in these books or other reference books, and if it's not a if it's a non-native species, that sort of thing. But when and where I administer on just like a weekend landscaper who wants to do the entire front yard, there's no specific language that says some kind of review needs to be done.
That'd be a staff review.
It could be, but when you start involving the neighbors, you know, when you say staff review, you're saying who's ever making that decision is gonna rule and determine what the neighbors are going to see. I don't know that that's the intent.
What I understand is currently someone can go out and scrape their yard over the weekend and put in a new, whatever they want to put in, and there's no review.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's written by Urban Design Kildare is we're gonna go the limit up to 25% that they can do that.
But then you have the question, 25% of what?
That's,
So-
but this is opening up a head. It's interesting, because in the review process of when one comes and presents a new structure, I'll never forget, you know, we always, bottom line, everyone says, we're not gonna see 2/3 of the house because it's gonna be landscaped out, but continually the boards correctly say, but someone could change the landscaping. They could take down all the hedges that are hiding the house and so forth, and we'll see this architecture that you've created. And that's why there's the protection of making sure first and foremost, that the architecture was such that we shouldn't mind if it was scraped down to the ground, so we're seeing it. Then in terms of the vegetation, there's probably protections in place that people can't plant non-invasive species just in the basic code.
Yeah.
And so what Urban Design Kildare is recommending here, though, is so to speak, an extra level of protection, randomly or not randomly, at 25%. In my head, I'm thinking, yeah, front yard's typically about 25%, or could be typically 25% unless it's a large estate. And this prevents someone from coming in and wiping out their front yard over a weekend and putting up something that is potentially not pleasing to the community.
Yes.
But I'm reluctant to advocate for that. I don't know, and it's two-sided, because there's the aggressive home gardener who's gonna, every year, just that's their hobby and that's their passion, want to change it. The flip side is the person who may want to make a statement with their yard. And you know, it's interesting, grass is native, but is there anything to prohibit one from, I'm a Gators fan and I want to paint my lawn orange every year. You know, is there something that prevents that from occurring? I don't think so. You know, that's the house that's owned by the Gators fan who wants the orange lawn every year, which ostensibly that 25% could potentially protect against.
I don't understand the 25%. I mean, you say front yard, but I see 4 pieces of property. And whether it's a side yard or a back courtyard, what constitutes 25%, I have no idea. I wouldn't even know how to calculate that if I was doing it myself.
But is it area, is it value of the materials?
But again, I mean, I buy a tree for $5,000, or I can buy 50 hedges for $500.
When I read it, I thought if one's looking for the further definition, it's like 25% of the square footage of the lot. That was sort of the way I knee-jerkly, without looking closely at the language.
Is it puzzling to you?
Is Mikey Boy there still?
Oh, no, I'm just, for years, it's been puzzling to me, so I now have partners.
I get it, when you're doing new construction or
It's very
significant renovation,
That's it.
you've got the control.
Permit for construction usually triggers the need for landscape review. So that's normally what happens.
Is that true here? Or anytime you have a permit, is the landscaping looked at?
No, I mean, when
If
you
it's a
have
new construction or
total new construction,
Or
absolutely.
even a big remodeling where
Right.
they're
Level 2.
building on
Yeah.
or something,
But you can
yes.
have, construction could be as small as 200 square foot addition.
Yeah. Okay. but there's
Construction
some
could be, huh?
Yeah.
A gate or a wall.
The flip side of this, somebody wants to remove, if someone wants to cut down a large tree on their property, do they have to obtain a permit for that?
Yes,
Yes.
8 inches.
Okay.
Yeah, up to 2 trees that are healthy. The administrator can approve. But there must be planning, some.
To replace it.
There's not an exception for dead in here.
Yes, well, then the code flips it and actually requires that they be removed, as Rita read. So
Okay.
a a live tree triggers additional planning. A dead tree
Got it.
requires removal.
So the 10-inch dead tree is covered by the other section, 20, 30, 22, 31.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have, going back to this planting thing, I have encountered some municipalities who have, landscape architects on board, just like they have an architect on board. And when they're doing landscaping, generally it's, it's a pretty moderate sized landscaping. They have that person review the plans to make sure that they're meeting the native species requirements, make sure they're meeting the buffering requirements for whatever, or cars or fences or whatever you have it. They review, they make the comments, and then they resubmit to the applicant.
Let me add to the language being specific. An example where we had a resident who, in Place au Soleil, planted acceptable materials in the entire front area of their home, obscuring the home from view. There is language in the code for Place au Soleil that it would be open to view. So you could have a person over the weekend plant trees, shrubs, materials, areca palms, all the way around the front of the home, which is a violation of the style of the district, Place au Soleil. So it's not straightforward. Each individual instance of this sort of thing brings to light weaknesses of the code.
Well, somewhere you gotta draw the line.
Well,
So you have a crazy neighbor who comes in and plants a bunch of perfectly authorized plants that you don't like, or that most people wouldn't like, or that nobody likes. You know,
or maybe they all like them, but they, it's not characteristic of the neighborhood, general neighborhood.
That's a big thing in most anything, is that this whole code was based on what, at that particular time, what was existing in that particular neighborhood. In other words, that's how they came up with the majority of the houses over here in the core were Bermuda. So they tried to design construction and landscaping and everything to follow and keep everybody in that style, so to speak. And of course, in Place au Soleil, it's the openness and everything that we've talked about, but it's hard. It's hard to know how to get that out to people and how to put it in the code. All we can rely on is do we consider that what they wanna do is going to leave an open front yard? People will ask you, well, what's open? If I put something low, you can see over it. You know, well, that probably was not the intent. But, that's one thing that has, I think, has caused property values to stay up in the whole town, is because they've tried to keep from having a hodgepodge of everything all over and keep a grouping that's similar.
Well, that's something you can be specific on in terms of, open sight lines, and that's something you apply percentages to, you have to maintain a
Okay.
50% open view of the
I
home.
like that.
That's a little bit easier.
Open view, as Rita said, is kind of a vague term.
But if you had a lot and you said that 50% of the view from the home must be open from the street, meaning that you can't have plants exceeding, 24 inches of height or something like that.
Okay.
You could set boundaries for that.
Yeah. And I can administer that
Yes.
easily.
I'm sensing, first of all, a general, maybe not negative, but certainly uncomfortability with the 25% approach.
I'm uncomfortable with it.
You know.
Because I rip out more than 25% of my garden all the time.
I wonder.
I really thought my neighbor yard without a permit.
I wonder, are these two people allowed to talk to each other during the week?
No, we're not.
What's that?
Not you two.
Oh, yeah, we can talk.
Okay, well, why don't, is it all right to ask that you guys have a telephone call and maybe try and come up with something along the sightline concept thing that might help the administrator?
Well, I'm okay with it. I
Well,
don't know
I
if Keith
mean-
is or you are, but
Well,
I mean, that's
I can
perfectly.
just add to it, because I know on other things that I've submitted to the town of Gulfstream specifically, where on percentage of window openings, I actually had to provide a smack-on elevation with a demonstration of what percentage of the surface is windows, that, because Keith was referring to, plant can be a certain height or this, that, there might just be a threshold that you have to be able to see a percentage of X of the landscape, and it takes an effort, but a drawing could be done. But then one could say, okay, I'm seeing 60% or 40% of the surface of the building. Granted, with landscape, it's much more difficult because angle of vision,
Right.
how much the plants grow and everything is a constant
Right.
motion.
But it does give a starting point, which I may not live beyond that starting point. So I don't care.
well,
I'm not
it's,
planting any redwoods here in Gulfstream.
it's certainly, I mean, you're in a difficult position, and it's certainly valid. I mean, hopefully maybe we accomplish something between now and the next meeting that addresses it.
Okay.
I have some outlines and guidelines you can show. Typically, you'll see that being applied on an oceanfront home. So people that have property across the street aren't blocking views of the ocean from people who may be driving down and riding bikes or walking. So,
We actually had that on the request. I think we better cut off our discussion and pick up next week where we are on this. And so we're assured of having the necessary time for our public comment. We have, according to the clock on the wall anyway, we have 10 minutes left. We have 2 people here from the public. So,
I'll save lighting for next meeting.
sorry.
You want to save the lighting? next
The
meeting?
lighting
Yeah,
portion
I
of
think
it.
we'll have to.
And the colors.
So with that, if there are no, it's all right with the committee, we'll move on to public comment, is that?
Looking forward to it.
Huh? Look forward.
But I do like clarity. Are you saying that you would like us to get together?
Yes.
I would like you to come back to us at our next meeting with a outline of something that will help you, but will be more specific, like he's talking about, as far as
Okay.
the situation where people do renovation. I think we're finding out that significant structure renovations and new buildings, new houses are covered.
Yes.
So it would relate to,
Okay.
And they would include lighting when you guys talk.
I can brief you on what I have come across that works for
can't get a report from you, can
I can do the report.
I? Thank you.
And I'll leave this for everyone
Yes.
who wants to read.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. O'Hare.
It's really populous.
Thank you, Chairman. The issues here today, I wish I could have spoke to before the vote was actually made. The statements by Mr. Thrasher about the PVC fence only existing in one location is not true. There's a house on Cardinal with a 6-foot PVC fence. It's been there for about 10 years, looks beautiful. Advancements in polymer technology with UV inhibitors and low sheen, you get PVC fences that look just like a white painted fence. I really think the committee needs to open up their mind to new materials. I have to talk about the fences in regard to privacy. A lot of people want privacy. No one's putting a 6-foot fence right up against the front sidewalk. They want a 6-foot fence that goes from the corner of their house to the property line. Now, I have some neighbors that are naturalists. They like to walk around in the buff. A lot of people have hedges, but you can't rely on a hedge for privacy. There's something called, I believe, the kinescope effect, whereas if you drive through by a hedge and look, you'll actually see through the hedge from those little snippets of light coming through. A fence doesn't allow that. It gives you privacy. The courts have said you don't have a right to privacy unless you have an expectation of privacy. A 4-foot fence or a hedge full of holes does not give you that expectation. Finally, the landscape code. 2 people have stated here today that our neighborhood, Plaza Soleil, is characteristically open. Now, if you went to our neighborhood, you would see that ARPB member Malcolm Murphy has a house that cannot be seen from the road because it's completely wooded in. Commissioner Mert Anderson, who used to serve here, has a 12-foot hedge completely blocking her house except for the small driveway cut that tunnels through the hedge. There's been no enforcement of this visual effect that Mr. Thrasher wants to maintain, and now if you go to the neighborhood, you'll see that a majority of the houses are actually hedged. There's 8-foot, 10-foot hedges. There's plantings. Everyone's trying to achieve some privacy. There are many houses with plantings right up to the edge of the road, and it's just not true to say that the neighborhood is open now. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have driven on the Blue Ridge Highway. The federal government wanted to maintain that in a wooded state. Property owners who have property against the Blue Ridge Highway have an easement agreement with the federal government. They have to keep those plants there. It's sort of the reverse of what you're trying to do here. It's called an aesthetic easement. If the town really wants to have this broad, open expanse as you drive down Avenue au Soleil, pay an easement and tell those people, this is what we want, broad boulevard, take those plants out. If you don't want to do that, let people use their property as they think is best. They're smart people. They want to put plants in that aren't on the list. That's just a reasonable thing to me. I'm not sure why that's such a big deal. Swale planting. The town has an ordinance that you cannot take plants out of the swale. That's the distance between the edge of the pavement and your property line. However,
Excuse me.
we're supposed to maintain the swale. We have to cut the grass. If a truck drives over it and tears it up, like happens over here at the core all the time, then homeowner puts the grass back. He's planting grass in the swale. What's the difference between grass and an oak tree? There's no distinction in the code between the plants. I don't see code enforcement going out and telling people, get that grass out of that swale. That's ridiculous. Now perhaps people would stop maintaining that city property, which Mr. Thrasher points out belongs to the town. People go out there and they pay their maintenance guys to cut that grass. Should they stop doing that? If they are in charge of the stewardship of that swale area, perhaps they should be in charge of what goes there, reasonably, not blocking views or causing a hindrance to traffic. Well, I've got a lot of other things, but that's all I want to talk about. Oh, one last thing. I got 11 pages of emails and communications. The majority of people want 6-foot fences. A lot of them want the PVC. I really think your recommendation should be that people should be allowed to do anything that doesn't violate our nuisance code. So if it looks good, 6 foot, let them do it. Don't try to micromanage that this should be made out of aluminum. What's wrong with stainless steel? Whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and committee, I appreciate the time that you're going to afford me today. I want to thank you in advance that I learned quite a bit here this morning, and I appreciate some of the illumination that I was able to obtain from this meeting. First of which is that I would tell you that I agree, actually, in the openness.
I'm sorry, sir, did you?
You know what, I did not, and I apologize. I'm Edward Slominski of 920 Indigo Point, Gulfstream. Thank you, I apologize for that. Having said that, I do agree that that openness effect that the town's achieving is something that I actually enjoy, and I think my house falls under that consideration. I think that the confusion that has developed over time, in a very antagonistic way, I have to tell you that the fences that people are looking for are very consistent with what Chris just stated. It's fences that run off the side of the house. A 6-foot fence protects people. A 4-foot fence does not protect anyone, in my view. And I think that there's a protection issue as much as there is an aesthetic issue. I also believe that material review along the line with what Chris just stated is something that should be given full consideration, because there's plenty of materials that people in this town with the financial means have been able to obtain all through this town, whether it's Place du Soleil or anywhere, that can adequately give the person and the resident what they're looking for. And if someone wants to spend that kind of money, they should be allowed to do it. The notion of a fence that blocks the view and all of that, again, this is where I'm in support of what's been said today and where I think you folks are trying to take it. But I will tell you that I'm not in agreement with the fence standard ordinance as it is in effect today. I question how this standard was forced upon the residents, and I believe that it was. There was this innocuous committee several years ago that was created to create this 4-foot fence that many residents have challenged the town manager to say, who's on this committee? Names weren't provided, and I can tell you, Tom and Diane Mulvey came forward and said, we'd like to know who was on the committee, we'd like to see how it came down. It was just very arbitrary. I challenge the notion that residents were properly informed and were subsequently queried over this. I believe and can demonstrate that despite the standard being in place, that it has been selectively enforced. I was before a town magistrate on that point, and our town manager indicated at the time that the mistakes were made and some people did get to put in fences, PVC fences, 6-foot fences. And I must tell you, I challenge what you said about 6-foot fences. I did a survey myself, and there exist 38 6-foot fences in our community. Many of them, though, are side to property line of the house as opposed to out front. So perhaps your view was that you were looking out front, and you are absolutely correct. There are very few 6-foot fences that I can even imagine having seen myself. But let's assume there are 1 or 2. I know that this selective enforcement has been haphazard and contrary to the standards enacted. I myself have been selectively a victim of this type of enforcement. I was forced to cut down 2 feet of a very expensive metal fence because of a lack of understanding, but chosen to be the one person who had to cut down their fence after 6 other residents put in PVC and 6-foot fences in our neighborhood during my construction period. So it falls very flat that there would be the possibility that this was just missed. I can tell you...
I'm going to have to...
I'm almost finished.
Okay.
I can tell you that I've been financially harmed by this selective enforcement. I firmly believe that our town manager's inconsistent approach to disputes over issues such as this has been upsetting and costly to the quiet enjoyment of the neighbors and residents of Gulfstream. I ask that this be re-examined and charged among other reviews of the code as it exists, which I see you're doing, and I got to tell you, I appreciate it. I come away with a sense that you guys are moving in the right direction, and I thank you for it. I thank you for your service. I appreciate it, and I hope that we can come up with something that is going to be a little bit better than what we've had here in the last several years. Thank you.
Thank you for your very constructive comments. That's, I wish we could let you go on a little longer, but
I
I'm
think
very
I covered
concerned that we apply a uniform standard.
Yep.
And thank you for
Well,
coming in.
that would be a big improvement. Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
The staff Anybody else on the committee have any comments? Jackson?
Nope.
No? Okay. Is there a motion for adjournment?
Motion for adjournment. Second.
Second? All
Thank-
in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are we off, Rita?
Almost, but not quite.